So today what I want to do is spend some time helping you write that personal narrative. And I just want to remind you that the rough draft should be written in your writer's notebook. If you're trying to watch this video and type it at the same time in Google Classroom, it's going to be really hard. So planning it out is a lot easier than actually just going forward and starting to type it first. So write the rough draft in your writer's notebook. So don't forget there are 4 writing purposes: expository, narrative, descriptive, and persuasive. And we're actually focusing on this narrative. We're actually going to tell a story here. That's what we have been discussing in class. So personal narratives, the whole idea behind them is that they recreate a specific experience or event in your life. So we choose one moment in time. A moment is not a year. A moment is not a full day. You have to pick from that whole story just one moment. That doesn't mean a minute, but it might be just when you were in the class, one class. It might be the moments in between in passing for that class. It's like taking a camera and taking a picture of just one moment in time. So you should select an experience you feel strongly about, but don't forget what I said in class. It should be something that you're comfortable with students and teachers reading. So if you have a topic and you're thinking, geez, I don't want other people to read this, then I wouldn't write or use that topic. Again, you want it to be something you're comfortable with. So be selective with the details. Basically, we want sensory details. We want to paint a mental picture for our readers. So the idea with sensory senses is you can see it, hear it, smell it, taste it, touch it. But we also need specific details from the entire event. But however, our readers don't need to know every single little thing. So ask yourself, what don't we need? So when you're crafting the story, planning it out on that graphic organizer, make sure you select details that are important, that will help you retell the story, and avoid the stuff that isn't necessary or important. So don't forget, a narrative has 3 parts, and if you look at that graphic organizer, you'll see that I kind of box them into sections. You have an introductory paragraph, and this is where you, talking in this moment, are going to introduce us to the experience, but it doesn't give away the experience. It doesn't give away the result at the end. This is where you get to state that theme statement. The body paragraphs are where you take us back in time. It's a flashback, so you go back in time and share the experience. And then your closing paragraph, we come back to the present moment and we reflect on the experience. And this is where we tell the reader the theme, the lesson that you learned from this experience. So we want to understand our goals for actually writing a narrative. You have to remember that your ideas should be clear. We want to recreate that life experience. It should be organized, so the story is told in chronological order with a strong beginning, middle, and end. And this goes back to that grammar lesson I had in class about ellipses and em dashes. You want to sound natural, believable, interested in your own topic. So understanding our goals, again, think about your word choice. So for word choice, you want to make sure that you choose appropriate words based on their connotations, that underlining meaning, that you make sure each sentence connects smoothly with the other. And under conventions, obviously use spell check when you do type it. When you're rough draft writing it in your writer's notebook, the idea is not to worry about conventions, because when you type it up, you'll get that idea. But in our writer's notebook, you want to make sure that you just keep the ideas flowing. But go back once you type it and look at capitalization, grammar errors, and don't forget to ask about em dashes and also to ask about yourself where you can include ellipses. So pre-writing is where it all begins, and the pre-writing should be done in your writer's notebook. That's something I'll be looking for when I check your writer's notebooks, that you have the pre-writing done there. So when you're getting yourself set up to write, look at that handout I gave you in class. Look for writing ideas from what you have in your writing territories. Select an idea. Look, it says for public writing. Again, remember that more than just Mrs. G is going to read this. It could be other students or maybe under other teachers. Think about your goals for the assignment. This is where we're coming up with the theme, the purpose of it. What is our theme that we're writing to? And ultimately, why do we think people would be interested? And identify your audience. Who exactly is going to be looking at this? Also, you want to gather those specific details. So when you look at that handout I gave you, I asked you to think about 5 important details: sensory details, personal thoughts, actions, and you want to make sure you include them in your story. And then lastly, make sure that you include, like when you write up your story, that it should happen chronologically. It's really confusing to a reader if you jump around from beginning to the end to back to the beginning again. So build towards that climax or high point. Work in actions that respond to the problem. Start with the problem is a great way to begin it. Actually go into the action. So take a look at these important bullet points that really help you work your way through of how do I get started. And then we always want to add dialogue. Let your character speak. That's you. So you should be speaking throughout it. And then you're ready to write. So now I just want to talk about writing the story and how to go about getting it set up in your writer's notebook. Remember that rough draft is not typed yet. You want to write it in your writer's notebook first. So make sure you tell the complete story of that one moment. Remember, it shouldn't be a week, it shouldn't be a year, it shouldn't be a full day from when you get up in the morning to when you go to sleep at night. It's just one moment. In class, I passed out an example of a narrative, and I asked you to label it as example of a narrative. So take a look at that. Just 2-page example of a narrative. It's just one moment in time. We want to grab the reader's interest in the beginning. We build suspense in the middle, and then in the end, we do tell the reader how we were changed by the experience. That's the whole purpose of the theme statement. We use our details and we include dialogue whenever possible. Don't forget to add in the ellipses and em dashes that I had talked about in class. Sometimes it's helpful, this is not required, but sometimes students feel it's helpful in their writer's notebook to write on every other line, leaving space for additions and changes later on. You can be the best judge of that. And when you write the personal narrative in your writer's notebook, make sure you get the big picture in there. You should know before we even begin by using that graphic organizer how the story will begin, end, and everything in between. And then you're ready to really start, and you should start in the middle of the action. Introduce the main problem. Include important background information, and again, use transitions. When you get to that middle part, you're building towards that suspense. Include the details that are really key to the action. And again, those sensory details, what you're seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling. And work in your personal thoughts. You are allowed to use I in a personal narrative. Maintain that suspense. And when you reach that concluding paragraph, you should be ending with that whole idea of how you overcame the problem, how you accomplished something, and what you learned from the experience. So hopefully this is all information that will help you. So look here in Google Classroom. Beyond this video, look at how I gave you a graphic organizer to help you write as well. And don't forget, the first rough draft is in your writer's notebook, and then you're typing up that rough draft in Google Classroom. And so that should be the second part. So it really becomes like a second draft for you. That's why you have so many days to work on this. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to come and see me.